Copy.
I copy you.
We're on Parkhouse Hill and the convoy's just arrived and we've just lit the flares. I've got 3 launches coming up and I think I see 2 control vehicles, so it should be within about 4.5 minutes. Over.
Thanks, Snapdragon. Got that. We'll be ready.
14th of January 1986, 1:35 a.m, Salisbury Plain, England. For the 19th time since its first deployment in March 1984, a cruise missile convoy is terrorising the sleeping British countryside. As on every occasion, its progress is being monitored by Cruise Watch, from the time it sets out on its exercise until its return 7 or so days later to its base at Greenham Common in Berkshire. Since November 1983, this so-called RAF base has been home to the 501st Tactical Missile Wing of the United States Air Force, and the place where the American military prepare for nuclear war. From these silos, the missiles and their support apparatus are supposed to slip unnoticed to secret firing sites in rural England. Their practices have so far been confined to military establishments, mainly the firing ranges on Salisbury Plain and at Longmoor Camp, shown here in yellow. These are the roads most frequently used by crews. A typical 80-mile round trip takes death speeding through the streets of Newbury and Hungerford and the ancient borough of Marlborough, past Woolworths, W.H. Smith's, the Castle and Ball Hotel, and almost through the dormitories of the famous school. Next stop, Devizes. In the picturesque heart of England, doomsday rumbles yards from the slumbering houses on its way to its secret dispersal site. Thanks to Cruise Watch, the secrets have never been kept yet. A full flight complement of 16 cruise missiles is carried in a convoy of 22 vehicles plus a massive police escort. It comprises 2 launch control centres, 4 transporter erector launchers each weighing 58 tonnes, and 16 support vehicles, including Rio trucks and Dodge personnel carriers, both often with trailers. Once Cruise is at its launch site, normally hidden in a wood, Cruise Watch observes its location and its movements night and day, maintaining contact by CB radio until it returns.
The convoy is to the left-hand side of the track, the copse facing north-west, and then the 2 Land Rovers are over on the track just up there, about where that aircraft is now.
Despite being guarded by British soldiers and rows of coiled barbed wire, demonstrators have gained access to the cabs of launch control vehicles and left messages for their American operators. In July 1985, over 1,000 gathered at Woodhenge on Salisbury Plain. On this occasion, the military had selected for deployment the Imber Ranges, a part of the plain that has been closed to the public since the Second World War. This was presumably in the hope that the anticipated large number of demonstrators would be deterred from trespassing on a strictly prohibited area. In the event, the authorities were hard-pressed to contain the numbers of demonstrators. In the course of the afternoon, well over 100 people were arrested and charged. Cruise watchers frequently risk arrest by walking on the thousands of acres of Salisbury Plain taken over by the military for their war rehearsals. When the warning flags are flying, the public rights of way governed by the special bylaws are closed to all but military traffic. Notices are displayed at village halls on the days when the ranges are not in use. In sub-zero temperatures in February 1986, cruise watchers gathered at Whitedown Barrow, a National Trust site, one of many ancient monuments on Salisbury Plain. Nearby is Westdown Camp and Westdown Plantation, in which a cruise convoy was hidden. Cruise watchers were allowed to exercise their right of way through the camp, although they were heavily escorted. Once the authorities decided that we had enjoyed our rights, they took steps to remove us.
You have been warned. You are not now. You are under fire.
Well, that's a really good. One more club with his hand around somebody's throat there.
Although it was a non-firing day, some cruise watchers were arrested, but later released without charge. Watch here by the white van for the cruise watcher who has walked past the cordon and is knocked to the ground by an MOD policeman. The other police immediately tried to prevent the camera recording her distress, but were unable to stop others going to her assistance. The casualty was concussed and eventually removed by ambulance. Despite positive opposition to the sighting of crews in Britain by 2/3 of the electorate, it has been introduced by a government apparently determined to accommodate the American military machine at any price. British policy has slavishly allowed it to heighten tension and undermine peace initiatives by calculatedly bringing crews out during the Geneva Disarmament talks and international confrontations. The cost of security for military establishments and exercises is now astronomical, crippling and shameful. The Ministry of Defence Police, the smallest force involved in protecting the crews, alone spent £6 million on policing demonstrations in 1983, and over 10,000 arrests have been made since 1981. The scale of objection to horrific weaponry, far from being accepted as evidence of public will, is now met with ever greater resources to oppose, restrict and discredit legal dissent.
Cruise was designed to have a high profile, and I think one of the things we're doing in Cruise Watch is making them pay for that in a way they never expected to. Because Cruise goes on our roads, it goes on Salisbury Plain, it wanders past sleepy country cottages. It's American, it's highly visible.
Smaller convoys of support vehicles used to travel alone. Sometimes they were stopped by Cruise Watch, but sometimes they stopped themselves. This Dodge and trailer blocked the main road from Newbury to Basingstoke for over 3 hours. Nothing was allowed to happen until the American breakdown truck arrived from Greenham, and the lack of concern about the blockage of an important link road was clearly shown by the demeanour of all concerned. This is the return of another support convoy to Greenham.
We've got a lorry in front of it. We've got the camera. Bring them. Jay, wait, come on. And light.
This demonstration, support vehicles have always returned in daylight or as part of the heavily policed main convoy. At Longmoor, support vehicles have been repainted in the woods whilst the crews were asleep in them. When this control vehicle was painted on its way back to Greenham, the convoy was first brought to a halt by parking a car at a point where traffic normally moves slowly. Both sides involved in any protest action of this sort have a serious responsibility to preserve the safety of all concerned. But safety is disregarded by some military drivers. Fences have been demolished and pavements mounted on the wrong side of the road by vehicles travelling dangerously fast. These cruise watchers are waiting to follow the convoy to check its speed on this outing.
Message to all Herbs. The convoy is now 3 miles north of Bullington.
There's a motorcyclist going through on the inside. They're weaving about. The police are trying to stop us catching up with the convoy. They're weaving in and out of private vehicles. They're all mixed up. We're all doing about 55 miles an hour. We were doing more just now, and the convoy's still pulling away. This is incredible. There's 256 megatons of nuclear weapons ahead. There are lorries of 58 tons that we're going past people's homes feet away, and there's ordinary people in cars here all mixed up. It's incredible. There's some protesters on the side here waving. I mean, where do they come from? They're in the middle of nowhere. We're slowing down. They're holding us back again. Can't see any of the convoy vehicles now, only the police. Slowed right up. Try and get past him, Dave. Try and get past him. No, we can't get past.
Oh, okay.
He's waving his torch at us. Can we get through on the left? Go! Go on! Go! Go! Go!
Beautiful.
What's this? What's happening now? Oh! Stop. Stop. They've got us. More demonstrators turn out for the return journeys because they have a greater chance to make arrangements. Each time their numbers grow larger. Policing levels similarly have increased. This convoy returning in 1984 was escorted by what now seems to be very few police indeed. Compare this with the level of police activity as Crews returns late in 1985. Long before it arrives, the main trunk road is closed just south of Greenham Common in both directions. Now the convoy arrives, escorted by dozens of white vans. As the police make their way back home, it could never be claimed that Crews has simply melted into the countryside. Crews watchers will continue their protest until cruise missiles are removed from this country. You can help to bring that day closer. Once while filming at Greenham at dusk, an American driver brought MOD police out from the base to identify a woman whom he accused of throwing paint at his vehicle. In fact, he had deliberately driven across the verge, threatening the lives of women on the pavement. They asked us to film him for future identification, and immediately the British police shielded his face and escorted him back inside. This is the extent to which the British government will go to protect the American military at the expense of their own citizens.
Tried very hard.
When you ask people in Britain the question, how many times has an American cruise missile convoy exercised on their roads, few guess anywhere near correctly. Many are unaware that these truly infernal machines have been out at all. Others estimate 6 times, a few say 10. The actual figure is 23. It's not surprising that the deployments don't often come to the public's attention through the media, since the whole intention is to make them familiar, accepted and unnewsworthy. The success of Cruise Watch in ensuring that cruise never goes unremarked and unreviled has cut down its frequency of deployment and confined its movements very appropriately to the blackness of the night. So this very success has helped to keep the public in ignorance of the mighty war machines roaring through their countryside and protected from protest and rejection by an enormous and costly force of their police. To help to remedy this lack of awareness, cruise resistors enlisted the aid of another generally unpublished statistic, that of the number of American military installations in the United Kingdom, a staggering 160. The plan was beautifully simple. When cruise was exercised in July, publicise the fact by demonstrating at each and every US facility, thus drawing attention to 161 examples of the breadth and depth of America's effective occupation of this land. The Pentagon's use of Britain as its unsinkable aircraft carrier. Croughton in Oxfordshire is the American equivalent of GCHQ in Europe, a communications and intelligence base, one of 16 giant talk stations round the world. Another little-known fact about such bases is that in time of international crisis, large areas beyond their boundaries would be subject to American military law, enforced by soldiers and security police such as those in this gatehouse. Imagine this gentleman evicting you from your home at gunpoint.
We wondered if you're aware that there were more than 160 US bases and facilities in Britain altogether. Did you have any idea it was that many? This is part of a network which we're hoping to highlight this weekend by having actions at each one of the 160 US bases and facilities to show that we would have no control over our own country in a time of crisis, and that time of crisis would be decided by the American president and not our own government. Do you understand that that's very difficult for people to accept?
We're going to have to ask you to move because you're blocking the inbound traffic.
I mean, do you realise how much it is offensive to people to feel their country has been taken over, so they need permits to go places where it was countryside, and footpaths have been cut off. You know, there is a footpath through this base, or there was a footpath.
And today we're using a public brideway. It's still open. They haven't closed it, or well, they haven't yet. And using the protection of the Highways Act 1980. The Access to Countryside Act 1949 and 68. We are perfectly legally travelling across a frontline communications base.
For the Reclaim the Bases weekend on July the 18th and 19th, 25 people from Banbury CND decided not only to walk the footpath, but to hold a picnic along the way.
I'm going to hey, could you take your hand off?
I'm asking you, please remain off your
Oh, you are breaking the law.
All right, ma'am, I'm asking you at this time.
This is an English driveway, and it hasn't been...
Individuals just crossing the fence.
There isn't a change. There's no law.
There's no law that can walk on
There is a law which says that this is illegal. If you lay hands on any of these people,
yes, and this should come down, in fact.
Prosecution for assault.
On this occasion, mention of the British law was enough to dissuade the security policeman. One wonders how long such a threat will continue to carry any weight at all, and when the interests of the fatherland will overcome any small considerations such as British justice.
Yeah, that's it.
Mind your trousers. Okay, just swing round and over.
Roger, what you need here?
This should be removed anyway by the time we get back.
so. I think that's probably you, do you?
Is there a spokesman? Will you be leaving shortly?
Nearby Barford St John is a relay station for Croughton, and Chipping Norton's CND held an uncomfortable but effective 24-hour vigil at its gate. It's ironic that Britain, that once colonised much of the world, has itself been invaded by a foreign power without even noticing it. All across the country, the weekend saw marches, vigils, meetings, camps and actions of varying levels of defiance and legality, all spotlighting the twofold impositions of the 160 US bases and the current exercising of crews. Kemble in Gloucestershire was the home of the Red Arrows until the American Air Force took it over for an aircraft maintenance base, thus attracting a 24-hour picket. Nearby is Fairford, from where tanker aircraft left to supply the F-111s used for President Reagan's unilateral bombing of Libya. This action exposed forever the myth of America needing to engage in any meaningful consultation with sane and independent representatives of the British people before using their soil as a springboard from which to wage war. Fairford was thus naturally a prime target during the 2 days of activity. Over in South Wales is another type of installation where the American military have some unusual and rather unfriendly plans for their local allies.
Well, of course, Barry is one of the docks that will be completely taken over by the Americans in, well, an emergency. Any nuclear emergency, any international tension that becomes sufficiently serious could result in bar plan being put into operation, which means we could be evicted from our houses could be knocked down, you know, to make fire zones, and we would have not only no compensation, but the Americans would have powers of instant arrest, and I believe in certain circumstances execution.
Whilst Cruise, on its guarded range on the Salisbury Plain, was rehearsing its role for the day when an American president decides to take civilization to the grave with him, Cruise resistors were cataloguing some of the US sites in the vicinity. At Tidworth is a hospital to convince those manning the good ship Britain that they would survive an exchange of nuclear hardware. Not far away, at Boscombe Down Airfield, there is a research establishment charged with creating ever more imaginative and vicious weapons. And there are other, more pastoral objections too.
My protest is that the Americans have taken the rights away of the people of Wiltshire to use the footpaths. And I think it's about time that the public realise of Wiltshire that the footpaths are their rights from going back thousands of years ago. And if we're not careful, before long they're going to do the same with Salisbury Plain as what they've done with Greenham Common. And I'm absolutely dead against that. I think slowly this country is being taken over by the Americans, and the British troops are being dictated by the Americans.
Cruise watchers always know when the launchers and their support convoys are about to go home to Greenham, and they naturally like to give them a big send-off. And there's always someone who wants to get in on the act.
3 trailers, 4 trailers.
and a Morris Minor.
5 trailers, dodges with trailers, this is 6. 7. 1 innocent cruise watcher in the middle, holding it up. Beautiful, beautiful. The police, I don't know what the police is doing, they're surrounding him.
Either you do it or I do it.
I think they're going to
Move it now.
Move the camera this way.
Move it now.
What?
Are you filming? Are you filming?
We've got 6 dodges and 1 with trailers and 1 without so far. The
Are you pushing me off the road?
That's the 7th dodge, they're bouncing him off the road. The 8th dodge. Get all that drag.
Bastards!
Cruise watcher is safe. The blue bottles have left him, he's climbing out of his car. 1 more support coming now. 1 dodge and trailer coming now.
This Dodge and trailer, recklessly driven, almost caused a serious accident to a spectator, yet its crew went unchecked whilst the camera crew got threatened South American style.
Go stand on the grass verge, or we'll make you disappear.
We'll take this grass verge over here.
Verge now.
So the American forces can drive dangerously, block roads, hold up traffic, insult passers-by and spray offensive substances on protesters, and still enjoy the support of an increasingly presumptuous and compromised British police force. America has a record of support for regimes where the police do indeed make people disappear, and the lengths to which the military, armaments and nuclear establishment have proved they will go to protect their interests and further their influence should sound a warning knell for democracy. Chicksands is an electronic monitoring base in Bedfordshire, the US Air Force's largest non-flying base in the UK. A considerable-sized weekend peace camp was set up on the wide grass verge outside. A feature at this action was the giving of lectures and talks to an appreciative audience of all ages.
NATO propped up Portugal when it was run by dictators. NATO propped up Spain under Franco. NATO propped up Greece under the colonels. People in this country don't want US bases. The people in this country have said in our own...
A small group was allowed to deliver a letter to the base commander, although it was received by the token British RAF commanding officer, normally the only RAF man on site.
Hey!
The party then paraded round the exterior of the base, rather as though doing so might bring it tumbling down in the style of Jericho.
Well, the fact that we knew nothing of this in the States, that we didn't know that the English people didn't want our bases here.
Mm-hmm. But do you think that's going to make any difference?
Knowing our government, no.
Every action had its own flavour. That at the Atlantic underwater listening post at Brawdy in West Wales had a carnival atmosphere.
Oh
Could you tell us why you've come here today, please?
Yes, I've come here because I know the cruise missiles are rattling through the British countryside at an obscene speed to be deployed I don't know where, against the wishes of the majority of the public. And I want the Americans in this base to know that I know cruise is out. I don't approve of it. Their security is a joke, and I want them to take their toys and go home.
One at a time. Straight line. British places in your country. Why is crews out on our roads, blocking the roads? We love you being here, seeing our country. We love to see your country.
Could you tell us why you're here, please? We'd like to know. We've asked everybody else who's been here this morning why they're here. Could you tell us why you're here, please? We've asked everybody else this morning. Could you tell us why you're here, please? We've asked everybody else this morning.